We're going to, this evening, read some prayers for the evening service and honour Anna. And because of that, on page 653 in the Siddur, the back of the book, 653, at the foot of the page, we'll begin with a poem that was set to music, written and set to music by Hannah Shenesh, one of the heroes of the Second World War and an example to all the Jews around the world. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
And I'd ask you now to turn all the way back to page 2 for the weekday evening service. We are called unto life, our destiny uncertain. Yet we offer thanks for what we know, for health and healing, for labour and rest, for renewal of beauty in earth and sky, for that blend of human and holy which inspires compassion, and for hope, eternal promising light, for life, for health, for hope, for beautiful, bountiful blessing, all praise to the source of being, Baruch atah Adonai, Makor Nefesh Kol Chai. And over the page to Baruch Hu, page 4.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai Mevorach, Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al mitzvat kriyat shema, l'hamlichot b'levav shalem v'yachdo, b'lev tov u'le'avdo b'nefesh ha'pitzah. Praised are you, O eternal God, ruler of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us how to recite the Shema, to declare wholeheartedly God's rule, to declare earnestly God's one, and to willingly worship God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'dvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sharim, u'b'tvona mishanei etim, u'macharif et hazmanim, u'sadet ha'kochavim b'mishmoratehem, b'rakia kirsono. Bore yom v'layla, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת, על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, נגי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך לתסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לתורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Sing the song of men and women, joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home, to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. Page 16.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה לי אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני Kal Yisrael.
And the evening prayer, Hashkivenu, cause us to lie down in peace, page 18.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ותקננו בעזרה טובה מלפניך והושיענו למען שמך והגן בעדנו והסר מעלינו אויב דבר וחרב ורע ועגון והרחק ממנו עוון ופשע ובצל כנופך תסדירנו, כי אל שומרנו מצילנו אתה, כי אל חנון ורחום אתה. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, שומר עמו ישראל לעד.
Guard our going and our coming, to life and to peace evermore. Baruch atah Adonai, shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. And before we begin the memorial prayers, as the sun has set and darkness has fallen, a new day begins in the Jewish calendar. And so we've paused to pay tribute to a wonderful woman, the matriarch to a large family, beloved by her husband and by her children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Yesterday in this shul, there was a remarkable reaching out across boundaries, just as she did throughout her life. Divisions didn't matter, as Rabbi Shimon Cowen spoke lovingly about his mother from this pulpit, and family from all parts of the Jewish and the political spectrum sat together. Most people, the age of 96, have outlived their friends and many of their family members. But this packed congregation showed that in the case of Lady Anna, this was not true. It was a wonderful demonstration of respect and of love. Kate will soon speak about her mother, and we will remember her, as Josh Frydenberg said, the epitome of dignity and grace. And as the eulogy in the Australian newspaper this morning observed, she was the emotional ballast during the family's long life of service, including those memorable years when she lived at Yarralamla with Sir Zelman, as they helped to heal the soul of a nation carved apart by predecessor Sir John Kerr in 1975. Indeed, together, they did it so well that the artist Fred Williams is quoted as saying, they set back the cause of republicanism in this country for 25 years. And all this is mere commentary. Her heartland was the family and the sparkling eyes of those wonderful grandchildren, both here in Australia and in Israel. And her presence among us, her beautiful smile. Kate, would you take over?
For those of you who were here yesterday, John Levi, Cantor Laloom, and my brother Shimon did us proud. They really raised the bar. and I was expecting today that words would pour out of me, but somehow my head just filled with cotton wool. So I've done the best I can. I wanted to say that my brother Shimon isn't here tonight, not out of any broigas, but because he is running parallel Minyan at his house with his community, but he was here yesterday, and my nephew, Cowen, oversaw the interment of my mother at Springvale, and it was a memorable day and as good a send-off for a remarkable woman as you'll ever find. And you won't all be able to see this, but I brought this photo taken by a friend of mine, Linda Vuchtel, and if some of you want to see it, I felt this photo really exemplified my mother and the relationship we had. And I want to tell you that yesterday they talked about how marvellous she was and her equanimity and her smile. But now I'm going to put some meat on the bones. Okay. So, our family has lost our beating heart. Since last Friday afternoon, when she died so suddenly, I've been wondering how life can actually continue without her. Mum has been the connective tissue for our family. Ours is an unusual family in many ways, not just because my two older brothers are black hat ultra-orthodox, no one saw that coming, and the rest of us are various hues of pale grey, but because at various times we've been scattered around the world: Oxford, Munich, Toronto, Jerusalem, Brisbane, Canberra and Melbourne. But Mum managed in all her various ways to keep us interconnected and whole. She deployed many methods. When my older brother's kashrut requirements meant meals together looked impossible, she created a kosher cupboard with suitable toiveled utensils, enough plastics to destroy several biosystems, and later a dedicated kosher barbecue so that the family could still congregate and eat. She would write in her distinctive clear hand on aerograms to whoever was abroad, densely packed news of what the other siblings were doing. I received one a week when I spent a year in Israel, and again during my 5 years in Toronto. She took home videos of the family in Israel on her visits there, and then videoed the Melbourne family watching the videos of the Israel contingent. This reached the point of farce when on one occasion she filmed the Israel family watching the Melbourne family watching the Israel family. But it did the trick, and somehow we stayed whole and we all felt we knew each other. We also stayed whole in other fundamental ways. Despite our vastly disparate lifestyles and beliefs, Mum and Dad observed a strict policy of tolerance and respect. Live and let live. So while other families might fracture under these circumstances, there was never a schism in ours. Although I have to say, I got the short end of the stick. Because although I attended all the simchas of my religious brothers in appropriate dress and celebrated them, I recently found the photos of my first wedding in Canada under Mum's bed. Possibly because in best Jewish tradition we married in a Buddhist temple with a monk officiating. Okay, for those of you who were here yesterday, and you can stream it if you weren't, you will have heard from Rabbi John Levi and my brother Simon, or Shimon, about Mum's extraordinary qualities, her essential goodness, her omnipresent smile, her kindness, her equanimity, and the fact that the private and the public Anna were one and the same. She was gracious, she was dignified, she was unpretentious, but she was also a lot more than that. She was truly her own person. Mum was raised to be good, compliant, and not make waves. And she was. She was the perfect, well-behaved daughter. Her parents couldn't contemplate her being anything else. She told me that a portrait painted of her not smiling caused her parents such distress, they burnt it. She had different plans for her children. Mum was an early proponent of Dr. Spock. She believed in demand feeding, being relaxed about toilet training, and in children having a voice. She wasn't a stickler for pleases or thank yous, but cared about the spirit of our behaviour, that we were respectful and decent human beings. She believed in validation and accepting all feelings, good and negative. Apparently, when I was born, my next oldest brother, the brother formerly known as Nick, did a drawing. Mum said, "Tell me about it." She said, "You must never say to a child, 'What is it?' That creates too much pressure." And he replied, "It's a machine for cutting up babies." She thought it was wonderful he could express his resentment at being displaced. She believed we should not be stifled, so we went, despite Dad's grave misgivings, to progressive schools. Simon, Nick, we're going to use the old names, okay? The dead names. Simon, Nick and I went to Press Hill, where we were given free rein. This worked better for some of us than others. When we went to America on sabbatical in 1963, it was discovered Nick was illiterate. And for my part, my ability to spell has never quite recovered. Later, when we went to Brisbane, Mum was so horrified at the repressive state education system that she sent little Ben, the baby of the family, to a brand new progressive school called BIPS, the Brisbane Independent School. This school was so anarchic that there were no desks, since no material was deemed sufficiently biodegradable. And goats roamed the ground, eating children's lunches and sometimes their clothes. The parent cohort at this school were largely left-of-centre academics. They offered supplementary courses, the traditional things, philosophy, metaphysics. Mum weighed in with her own contribution to promote self-sufficiency. She taught classes on how to fry an egg. From that day on, Ben fried eggs whenever he was hungry, which was often. She was ahead of her time in other ways too. Early in her marriage in post-war England, Mum was keeping house on Dad's meagre student stipend and with post-war rations. It was here she learned her frugal ways. And then, to my chagrin, she discovered an American food writer and nutritionist called Adele Davis, who advocated improved health through better nutrition. Adele was didactic and humorless, and her books, with snappy titles such as "Let's Cook It Right," were Mum's Bible. Adele believed in fortifying dishes with wheat germ, lecithin granules and powdered milk to increase their nutritional value. These, she said, could be slept in imperceptibly. Believe me, they were perceptible. We accepted this, but drew the line when Mum started making blackstrap molasses ice cream with a mashed banana base. It was genuinely disgusting. Mum was making yoghurt, muesli, producing bean sprouts under the sink, making her own brown bread and cooking brown rice long before it was a thing. The Cowen children were desperate for refined carbohydrates. I can remember counting the days till Shabbos when we were allowed to eat white challah. We became animals at birthday parties. At our birthday parties, Mum served the children scrambled eggs before any treats because she wanted to make sure they had some nutritious food on board. I begged Mum not to volunteer for tuck shop duty because she was always trying to persuade the kids lining up for sticky buns and chips to buy fruit instead. Then in the early 70s, it got worse. She read Diet for a Small Planet and became concerned about sustainability. You see, she was really a woman ahead of her time. She discovered it took 20 pounds of high-protein grain to produce 1 pound of beef. So began a short-lived attempt to switch the family diet to complementary high-protein grains. Brown rice and lentils. This time, Dad led the revolt, although he continued to comply with other edicts. As my brother Nick wrote, "Who can forget Dad giving a forlorn look at the mandatory bowl of salad and asking Bale Philly, 'Do I have to eat this?' After being given a stern look, he would say with resignation, 'Please pass the grass.'" She was also conscious of the environment. She was an ardent lover of trees, and when our neighbour at the beach cleared his block of all foliage, she was aghast. "My God," she said, "he's an arborophobe." Cowen children were taught to pick up rubbish on our way to and from the beach. We recycled, composted, and were taught not to be careless with water. When in Canberra at Government House she saw table waste going into bins, she met with the household controller, Colonel Jones, to say, we must install chickens on the grounds to eat scraps and produce eggs. He put up a lot of resistance, but guess who prevailed? Although I believe the chickens were dispatched the minute we departed Canberra. She was also keenly interested in education, and while we were in Armidale in New South Wales and later Brisbane, she was instrumental in reinvigorating and becoming president of branches of the organisation called World Education Fellowship, whose goal is educational reform and greater understanding between nations. Behind her good nature, tolerance and omnipresent smile was a keen intellect. My father often called on her knowledge and recollections of myriad topics. One anecdote recalled by a friend, Don Markwell, was of an esteemed American judge, Felix Frankfurter, who sat next to Mum at a dinner in the late 1940s. He was bowled over by her understanding of US jurisprudence. At the end of the evening, he said to Dad, "As for you, young man, never write anything she can't understand." Sage advice. She was a huge contributor to any community she found herself in. As the wife of Vice-Chancellor, Governor-General and Provost of Oriel, she attended and hosted innumerable functions. She reached out to newcomers, wives of new faculty members, overseas students, anyone she felt needed help or connection to find their feet. She was a wonderfully warm and expansive host who never balked at an 11th hour request to have an extra person for dinner. There are countless instances of people who came into Anna's magical orbit and remained cherished friends till the end. When Mum turned 95, COVID meant there could be no celebration, so people sent contributions for a memory book I assembled. Most remembered sitting around the table where there was copious food, laughter and lively conversation. In Brisbane, where our home on Walcott Street abutted the university campus, Nick's law student friends were frequent flyers. One of these, John Lowes, recalled, "The time I spent at Walcott Street made an indelible mark on me. I was educated about some of the important moral compass points of life. The need to be tolerant, to respect everyone, and that every person had the right to express herself or himself, even if you were vehemently opposed to their views, and the need to act above reproach." Stephen Scala, who's here tonight, wrote, "How well you manage the marauding teenagers, with a drink, something delicious and healthy to eat, and most importantly, some gentle and always sensible words and ideas. I felt safe and listened to." This remained true of all the homes and all their friends until just last week. For me, Mum's salient qualities were her tolerance, acceptance and generosity of spirit and deeds. All her daughters-in-law describe her as uncritical, unintrusive and giving. She would go to Israel with her case bulging with practical gifts, and on one occasion took a sewing machine as hand luggage so she could make dresses for Nick's little girls. Simon's wife, Miriam, recalls Mum stocking the freezer, doing loads of washing, sewing dresses for simchas, and hosting weekly kosher bagel tea dinners. Lara, who's here tonight and without whom this would not have happened because she organised everything, Lara said, "Benz, I hit the jackpot when I scored you as a mother-in-law. You're the most gracious and diplomatic person I know. You make everyone you meet feel valued and important." Mum also had a wicked sense of fun, a zest for life, and openness to new people and experiences that never seemed to fade. And she had that enviable equanimity, the comfort in her own skin that very few achieve. She had a capacity to absorb experiences and write out the difficult parts of life with calm acceptance. This is how she coped with the loss of our beautiful Ben. Everyone fell under her spell. All her friends adored her. My boyfriends and both husbands were besotted. Her latest carer, the wonderfully kind Maggie, cried when she left Mum to go on a 10-day holiday. The electrician she used sent a condolence message saying how much he loved coming to her. The chef from Government House, Dad's PAs, his Commonwealth driver, all counted her as a friend. I literally could go on and on. Of course, the greatest relationship of her life was with Dad. A true love story and a partnership of equals. Their love and regard for each other was immeasurable. And Dad clung to life at the end, despite being desperately ill and diminished, because he couldn't bear to leave her. They both lamented that their life choices came at a cost to the family, and it did. The public life was hard on us. But in the 30+ years since they stepped back from public duties, they have more than compensated. In the years since Dad passed away, Mum lived with one of her granddaughters, Malky, for 3 very happy years until COVID struck. And then the mean daughter said, because she works in a hospital, she has to go. And her eldest grandsons, Sruli and Marla, and their daughters have lived in the upstairs apartment for over a decade. It has been a wonderfully happy family compound. When COVID struck, homestretch people, I became Mum's sole carer for a time with significant help from Sruli and Marla, and this has been the locus of my life in the years since. It has been a special time. I've gone most days and Mum and I have tackled hundreds of crosswords together, shared lunches, Shabbat dinners and countless stories, laughs and bawdy jokes. She had a wicked sense of humour and occasionally floor us with an off-colour ditty and the rare F-bomb. There have only been a few crosswords, but only when Mum, in the pre-vaccination days, busted out of house arrest and went down to Turak village in direct breach of my directives to stay home and keep safe. Of course, relationships between mothers and daughters can be fraught. Mum's description of me as a girl with a wide range of small talents is burned into my psyche. She certainly had a killer turn of phrase, but I am sure I gave her much more grief than I got. For the most part, we've become closer and more connected, and this is us, not just being mother and daughter, but close. Although she used to say, I have to say, 1 girl to 3 boys is about the right ratio. In closing, I want to thank a few of the people who enriched her latter years. I'll inevitably leave some out, but there are a few who warrant special mention. Her carers, Aziza and Maggie, who looked after her with respect and loving kindness. To the wonderful Sruli and Marla, who were there several times a day and who were feeling her absence most keenly. My brother Simon and Miriam, who came several times a week, the Melbourne grandchildren and great-grandchildren, my brother Nick, now Yosef, who rang several times a week from Israel and whose visit a few weeks ago with wife Shelley made her light up with happiness. There are others, and you know who you are. But I do also want to actually say, don't know where you are, a special thanks to Josh Frydenberg, who through COVID and elections and the aftermath of elections consistently made time to come. Thanks to all the health providers, particularly Nathan Better, her cardiologist, who gave me his home number, and to Hatzola, who attended Mum after every fallen episode. Last Friday, when she fell, the person who attended from Hatzola insisted an ambulance be dispatched, despite the fact that the ambulance said it didn't warrant it. And he stayed on the phone, insisting until they did arrive. Mum only had a few hours in hospital, and she died surrounded by family. I guess that's as good as it gets. Still, our hearts are broken, and we will miss her forever.
Terrific. Just right. We turn back into our prayer books for very few moments. First of all to page 576, where you'll find Psalm 23, Mizmor David, Adonai Roi lo echsar. A psalm of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Adonai Roi lo echsar, lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeini, ירביצני על מי מנוחות ינחלני נפשי ישובב ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו Adonai Rohi lo echsar gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema hema yenachamuni תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
Let's read those words in English. A psalm of David. With God as my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You set me in circles of righteousness for the sake of your name. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Esayinai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Eternal One, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and your coming, now and forever. Me'ata v'ad olam. And as we began with a song written by a heroine, Hannah Shenesh. So we turn to page 579 to a poem written by Zelda by the shores of Kinneret, Zelda whose surname was Schneerson. Each person has a name. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name given by our statue and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and given by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. Natan lo moto. And we turn now to memorial prayers, page 582, 583. El Malei Rachamim, and we rise.
El Malei Rachamim shochen במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים ותורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת חנה בת חיים ויוסף דבורה שלחה לעולמה בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסדר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen.
To our loved ones who have entered eternity, to Anna, grant clear and rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and the pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold her in the embrace of your wings. Secure her soul in eternity. O God, she is yours. She will rest in peace. And we all say,
Amen.
Amen. And we turn now to Kaddish, page 598. And would you all join with me? Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv v'meru amen.
Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach leolam ulalmei almaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'a v'yitraman v'yitnasei, v'yithadav v'yithalei v'yithalal, shemei d'kadashah
Brichu.
Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiron bi'alma v'meru.
Amen.
Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru.
Amen.
O say shalom bimromal, huya say shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru.
Amen.
May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to which we say,
Amen.
Hamakom minachem echem. May God grant you comfort and peace.